Bend Around the Wind by Skylia. Chapter 55, Fairy Tale. When Stark told him, albeit grudgingly, that it was fine with him if Hatchet accompanied them, Loki kissed him. He's never been openly affectionate with his lovers before, but Stark was different and it felt natural. It was only when their lips met that he realized that he did not kiss the man for days. So, the next second, he had the human pinned up against a wall, devouring his mouth, holding onto him tightly, almost desperately. Stark did not object. He kissed back as eagerly as he always did, winding his arms around Loki, pulling him close. They did not stop until both of them were breathless, but even then Loki refused to step back. Something clicked into place and settled down inside him from the proximity. Stark already told him he loved him and would not leave him, but words were one thing and this was another. Now he could touch and feel. It was tangible proof. "I don't want to let go of you," Loki told him quietly. "Then don't," Stark answered. Loki knew they would be fine eventually. He knew it even before this, but from that moment he believed it as well. There was not much left to do on Sarka after that day. Hatchet handed over all the local currency he had, telling them to spend it on anything that was needed, because they wouldn't be able to use it on other planets. So, Loki dragged Stark out of District 10, just like he planned to do. Stark was excited about getting his hands on more technology as Loki expected him to be. His almost childish glee and enthusiasm was strangely charming, and Loki found himself smiling in amusement quite a few times. They also bought a few things that could be valuable no matter where they went. Gemstones, mostly. It was Loki's idea. If they did not need them for their value, Loki could use them for magical practices. Either way, they would be useful to have around. Stark was only a little sullen about using Hatchet's money again, but Loki quickly convinced him that he should simply consider it Hatchet's contribution to their journey home. They did not linger for much longer on the planet, though. They were all very eager to be away from the cold and constant noise of the city. Hatchet chose the smaller of the two empty sleeping cabins on the ship. He hauled in all of his belongings and promptly fell asleep on the single bed in the room. He didn't wake up for over 2 days. By the time he was up and joined the rest of them in the cargo hold, they were already in space. He looked a little less pale, and most of his wounds faded into pale bruises. He kept his word about making an effort not to annoy Stark constantly, but that also meant that he was annoying Juju and Drongo instead. Drongo, as always, was a strong bastion of calm and serenity. Hatchet was going to take that as a challenge. Loki just knew it. Juju already declared that she was going to start throwing sharp objects at his head. P seemed strangely amused by him. She kept looking at him like he was some sort of strange animal, sometimes irritating, but generally entertaining. It was a few days before Hatchet brought up Loki's heritage again. Loki was surprised he managed to stay silent for this long. He could never stop pushing and prodding at things he shouldn't. This time he asked if Loki knew who his birth mother was, which he didn't, of course. Then he offered the theory that maybe it was her that tried to hide Loki in the temple. He thought that maybe it was more likely than thinking it was the notoriously cold-hearted King Laufey. Loki did not want to think about it. He didn't want to run the possibilities over in his head again. It would surely drive him mad if he did that. "I'm not bringing this up over and over again because I want to hurt you," Hatchet said. His face became firm and serious. Loki sometimes really hated his serious face. Somehow, it still made him feel like he was a child. "I'm talking about it because I want you to stop hurting," he said. "Prodding at wounds does not help them heal," Loki told him. "It does if it needs to be cleaned out first," Hatchet countered. "If you just wrap it up and forget about it, it will rot your flesh and eat you up." "Then say what you want to say," Loki said. It was best if they just got it over with. "I know the truth must feel like a terrible weight," Hatchet started, "but it can be more than that. It is what you make it to be. You can turn it into armor or forge it into a sword. It can only hurt you. Others can only hurt you if you allow it. It can be an asset. You mustn't be ashamed of yourself, my prince." "I have a lot to be ashamed of," Loki said quietly. "It does not mean you cannot face your mistakes with dignity," Hatchet told him. "Always hold your chin high and don't even try to forget who you are and what you are, not even for a moment, because others won't." "I never forgot, believe me," Loki argued, crossing his arms over his chest. "No, you never forget what others think of you. If you let them decide who you are, they own you. Hooks and chains, that's what that is. They strangle you." You talk like a fae again, Loki remarked, and Adget laughed bright and burly in reaction. And that I will never be ashamed of, he declared. No, you're Jotun by birth and Aesir by upbringing. Own it! I certainly won't let you forget it! Loki saw no point in arguing because Hatchet could be significantly more stubborn than he was. All right, fair warning, Hatchet spoke again. I'm about to embrace you. Don't make that face. I'm a takedown creature. You have to indulge me sometimes. He did indeed wrap his arms around Loki in a tight, firm squeeze and just laughed at Loki's long, suffering sigh. Loki sneaked into Thor's room to grab some of his clothes because while Loki was not that little, his tunics would be way too small for the elf. Thor was luckily not inside his quarters. It would have taken a long time to explain why Loki was covered in mud and blood. He wanted to present the bear pelt and the story in his own time. When he got back into his room, the elf was standing by the window, just where Loki left him. Thor is almost as tall as you, so these should fit, he said as soon as he closed the door. I shouldn't stay long, the elf said. You should stay at least until you tell my uncle about the flood, Loki said. And you can't wear bloody and muddy clothes for that. He's the king here. I have my own bath right there, he added. The elf eyed the clothes Loki snatched from Thor dubiously for a moment, then looked down at his own worn leathers. I suppose you're right, he agreed then. The pelt should be wrapped up and put in ice so it can be thawed and fleshed later. The meat will rot too if it's not frozen or dried. I'll take care of it, Loki offered. Just go and clean up. The elf nodded after a moment and took the clean clothes, heading to the bath. The court tanner was very eager to help him when he showed up with a bear fur. He declared it a great kill and praised him that the skinning was done very finely. He told Loki to come back later if he wanted to help finishing the pelt, to which he agreed readily. The tanner nodded at him approvingly. Loki already learnt that the elves took him more seriously if he did not back off from doing things on his own. The meat he had to get stored in the kitchen, but he gave very firm instructions that it was not to be touched, because it belonged to a guest. When he got back to his quarters, the elf was already clean and sitting on the windowsill. He looked a lot less shady and scruffy like this, and his hair looked so much whiter it was truly as bright as fresh snow when the sun shone on it. That still looked strange. Maybe he was from some faraway Ljosfar clan. That's why it looked so different. He wanted to ask, but he wasn't sure the elf would answer. Loki scrubbed himself clean thoroughly because he had just enough of being covered in dirt and dried blood. We should go to your uncle now if you still insist I talk with him, the elf said when Loki came back out dressed in clean clothes now. Why are you in such a hurry? I thought the flood washed away your things, Loki said. It can't be that good living in the forest anyway. It's better than living in cities, he said. Most elves like to be around their kin. I am not most elves, the elf answered. Yes, that I realized, Loki told him. Have you always lived in the forest? Did you grow up there? You said you don't have a family, but you couldn't have been completely on your own, not when you were a child. You have a lot of questions, the elf observed. I'm naturally curious, Loki told him. The elf smiled a bit. Yes, I grew up in the forest, he said. And no, I was not always alone. Loki narrowed his eyes. Were you raised by wolves? That would explain so much. The elf laughed, throwing his head back. No, but close enough, he said. Can you keep a secret? He asked then, his violet eyes twinkling with mischief. Loki sat down on the side of the bed closest to the window. Of course, he nodded right away. The Fae, he said. What? I lived with the Fae. Loki felt his eyes widen. But, the Fae are mean and vicious. They light you on fire and steal your teeth. The elf rolled his eyes. I'm a ridiculous child, he said. Only some of the forest pixies do that. Oh, that's reassuring. Wait, are you a Fae? The white-haired man chuckled and looked at Loki again. That twinkling was back in his eyes. No, I'm an elf. For the most part. Loki kept staring at him. He never saw a Fae before. Maybe they looked like elves, or they could shift their shape. He couldn't know. He said he was an elf, but the Fae folk lied a lot. He could be tricking him. The man stared at him for a moment, then huffed. I'm not going to steal your teeth, he said. I believe you, Loki said right away, maybe too quickly. I'm not a real Fae, the man said. You can calm down. How would I know that? Sure, you don't have wings. Do you? The man sighed. "Oh, you Aesir," he said. "Not all the Fae are fairies. Trolls don't have wings either, neither do gnomes. There are as many Fae as stars on the night sky. There are more than just pixies, fairies, and nymphs." "You know the Fae very well, then. Will you tell me about them? I thought the Fae and the elves did not get along, so if you're really an elf, why did they let you stay with them?" The man looked at him for another moment, then opened his mouth to reply, but he was interrupted when the door of Loki's chamber opened and Thor marched inside. "Brother, you're back!" he called right away. "I've been searching for you. The whole palace was searching for you." "I was in the woods," Loki told him. "You know you are not supposed to go alone." "I am not a child." "I could have gone with you, brother." "Last time you said you don't have time to watch me collect weeds."
"Well, because that's boring. But I assume would have gone with you. You only need to ask."
Thor argued. Then he finally noticed the elf in the room.
"And who's this?"
"A friend," Loki said.
I've never seen him before,"
Thor said. "Because you don't know all my friends," Loki said, which was, of course, not true. Thor crossed his arms in a way that made the developing muscles on his arms bulge out.
"Show off." "Is it true, then," Thor asked, "that you came back covered in blood? Are you hurt?"
Some of Thor's silly posturing dimmed then. His voice became tinted with true concern, and Loki felt his irritation slip away. "I'm fine, Thor. We killed the beast that attacked us."
"What manner of beast?"
Thor asked right away. "A giant black bear," Loki said. "It was at least 8 feet tall."
"Bears that big do not come down from the foot of the mountain,"
Thor objected. "This one did. Its pelt is at the court tenor. I'll show you once it's done, if you do not take my word for it."
"Peace, brother. Of course I believe you. Tell me then this great tale how you slew the beast."
Thor prompted, a brilliant smile tugging at his lips already. If it would have been anyone else, Loki would have thought that he was being mocked, but Thor was not one for subtle jokes. His mockery was loud and open, just like everything else about him. "No, I'll tell you at dinner when Mother and Uncle are there," Loki told him.
"Why would you not speak now? I thought you would be eager to share your tale. Come now, brother, this is a great feat to be proud of."
"Yes, but we have another conversation to finish. Me and my friend."
"Is that so?"
Thor asked, eyeing the elf.
"What about?"
The elf told him it was a secret, so Loki was not going to share much. "We were just talking about the Fae," he said.
"Ah, those vicious little creatures. I heard they steal your teeth in your sleep and pluck your eyeballs right out of your skull if you were not quick enough."
"Don't be ridiculous, Thor," Loki said. "Only some of the forest pixies steal teeth." Loki heard the elf huff out a small laugh at that.
"You have some good tales of the Fae folk then, elf,"
Thor asked.
"Let's hear it."
Loki was about to open his mouth to somehow discourage his brother from staying, but the elf spoke first. "You I did not offer," he said.
"What?"
Thor frowned at him. "You I did not offer to tell anything," the elf clarified.
"I'm a prince of Asgard,"
Thor said with his usual boisterous confidence, but he was also still frowning. "Is that supposed to impress me?" the elf asked in return.
"It means you will speak when I tell you to speak,"
Thor told him sternly, his furrowed brows turning truly angry. "He's just going to talk about Fae magic," Loki interrupted, getting his brother's attention, "and water illusions." It had the desired effect, of course.
"Ah, tricks of the Fae folk, that I do not mind to miss them. Let me know if you learn anything useful about battling them, brother. I heard there are a few villages in the west that have constant trouble with some goblin pests."
"Of course, brother," Loki told him. Thor nodded and left, not saying a word to the elf, who was staring at the door even long after it closed. "He's not so bad, I promise," Loki said. "He's just a lot to take in all at once, and he was surely just worried about me." He once heard it in a tale that some Fae folk took malicious revenge on those who were rude to them, so now he really hoped the elf was really an elf and not some Fae in disguise. "Pray he does not meet any real Fae. He would be in quite a mess with that arrogance." "I'll make sure he does not get in a mess," Loki said. "So will you tell me about how you ended up among the Fae, or do you not wish to speak any more?" "You have asked courteously," the elf said, "so I do not mind." Loki couldn't help but smile at that. This promised to be exciting. There were no Fae in Asgard, so none of his tutors ever spoke of them. Well, they told them how to kill trolls, but that was about it. The elves in Alfheim, on the other hand, disliked talking about them in general, saying it was attracting bad luck. Loki did not believe in such old wives' tales. The more you knew about things, the less reason you had to fear them. He only heard vague stories and rumors about the Fae so far, but now he had the chance to learn much more about them. Then he remembered something else. "Is that why you don't have a name?" he asked. The man, elf, Fae, whatever he actually was, raised his eyebrows. "You can trap a Fae if you know their name. Is that true?" "Clever boy!" The man smiled widely. "So you do have a name. You just won't tell me," Loki concluded. "No!" The elf shook his head. "Even if I had a name, I do not know it myself," he said. "It is long lost, or maybe it never existed." Loki settled back down on the bed to listen. "My mother, at least I think that is who she was," the elf started. "I remember her voice and that she was traveling through wolves' woods with me. I cannot recall her face, and I think I was too young to know her name. Even the way she called me is a long-lost memory now." The elf turned to stare out of the window again. "I remember her blood," he continued, "how it painted the grass crimson, and I remember how day turned to night, then to day again in silence. I remember glowing little wisps lighting up a path when the sun set again, and I remember following laughter. I remember strange folk dancing around a large oak tree, and I remember them arguing whether they should feed me or drown me in the stream." "Why didn't they drown you?" Loki asked, his voice only a whisper. "The older spirits decided that taking the life of an innocent child would bring bad fortune upon their heads, so they decided to keep me instead. They wrapped me up in their magic and kept me far from the elven towns, so that I wouldn't let any of their secrets slip as a careless child." "And they never named you?" Loki asked. The elf turned back to look at him. "The Fae guard their names more than the dwarves guard their gold. They told me that my true name being lost is the most fortunate thing that could have happened to me, because I didn't worry about keeping it a secret." "They must have called you something," Loki insisted. "Most Fae use monikers," the elf said, "not daring to tell their true name only to a chosen few, so it was not so strange that no one knew mine. Some just called me boy or lad, but most called me elfling." "I won't call you elfling," Loki wrinkled his nose. "It would sound strange here among the elves," the man agreed. "So you really are an elf?" Loki asked. "I was born one, but I do not belong among them, and they know it." "Can they see it? Is that it? Does your hair and eyes look different because of the Fae? Is it Fae magic?" Loki asked. "You're smarter than I thought," the man chuckled. That was twice now that he was praised for his intelligence. He could definitely get used to it. "So what should I call you then?" The elf shrugged. "Whatever you want," he said. "A moniker, then." Loki frowned, looking around the room. Oh, he could have come up with an elven name, but it wouldn't fit. This elf was different. He shouldn't be called like the rest. He was different in all the ways. He even had an arbalest instead of a longbow. To be fair, Loki couldn't imagine him with a graceful bow or even with a longsword, the usual weapons of the elves. The arbalest and the spear suited him well. A morning star would fit him, maybe an axe or a hatchet. Yes, something light but deadly, good for chopping and hacking. Definitely a hatchet. "Holy crap, Aesir, fairy godmother!" Stark exclaimed when Loki finished the tale of why Hatchet had such an unusual name for an elf. "By what?" Loki frowned. "That's what it was." Stark continued without answering. "I mean, I've been getting the best pals feeling, but it was more than that. I just couldn't put my finger on it. I knew it was something else. Hatchet half dodged the questions, even if he did tell me he met you when you were a kid. So first I thought it was some semi-familial thing, but I really couldn't see any brother-like vibes. It was driving me nuts. This is a perfect label." "What in the name of sanity are you babbling about?" Loki asked. "And he's not any sort of father of mine. Don't be absurd." No, not father. Trust me. He would be the worst father figure ever. I said fairy godfather. Loki frowned, and certainly his face showed how much he believed that the man lost his mind. "What is that supposed to be?" he asked incredulously. "And he's not a fairy, he's an elf who just happens to be a little bit of a fae." "Potato, potato," Stark said. "I have a feeling you actually have a point you want to make. Can we get to that?" Right, so we have these stories on Earth for kids mostly, well, fairy tales. Shockingly, sometimes they have fairies in them. Surprising, right? So there's this thing called a fairy godmother who helps a little princess, I don't know, get to the ball, meet her true love, generally protecting them from evil monsters and curses and stuff. You get the idea. "Well, your Midgardian tales are foolish," Loki told him. Most fairies would sooner tear off your nails and eat the flesh from your bones than protect you.
That is such a super disturbing mental image. But that's not the point. Stark said, and he started grinning. You're a prince, and he's some sort of elf fairy.
He's not a fairy!
And he's older than you. I mean, at first I thought you were around the same age, but that's obviously not true. It makes his protectiveness a little less disturbing.
With our long lives, it hardly matters,
Loki said. Stark looked at him for a brief moment, but then continued. Yeah, I get it. Once you're all adults, a few centuries here and there are meaningless, but seriously, how much older is he?
Over twice my age, Loki said.
Stark whistled. One would think 2,000 years would be enough to achieve some resemblance of maturity, he said. Loki had to laugh at that.
He grew up among the Fae. Maturity was never an option. They lived to be irritating. They literally have competitions. Be glad he ended up with the Forest Fae and not with goblins. Those are greedy little bastards.
I'm never going to get used to the way our life can go from spaceships to fairy dust in a heartbeat, Stark said wistfully. Loki chuckled.
The universe is a vast and mysterious place, he said. It has too many sides to count. Even I couldn't learn all of its secrets, even if I spent millennia traveling around.
Well, you could, Stark said.
Could what?
Travel around for millennia, avoid all the stuff that's waiting for you in the Nine Realms.
Loki looked up at him with a frown, but Stark was staring at something else from where he was leaning against the table in their room. I already told you I will go back, he said.
I know. Stark nodded. I just didn't realize what exactly you were going back to.
I did, Loki said. He knew from the very start. He agreed nonetheless.
Yeah, it just suddenly seems like a lot of trouble for only a handful of years.
Loki stood up now from where he was lying on their bed. What are you talking about? He asked.
Stark rubbed the back of his neck and sighed before he answered. That you're still going to have to deal with a lot of trouble, even when I'm no longer in the picture.
What? What was he saying? No longer in the picture? Why would he? I thought you said... He swallowed a lungful of air and spoke again. You said you wouldn't...
No!
Stark objected right away when he realized what Loki was trying to say. The vehemence with which he spoke managed to damper the sudden influx of emotions in Loki.
That's not what I meant, Stark said. Just, mortal. Here.
Oh. Which was, of course, not something Loki liked to think about. Not excessively, anyway.
It's fine. I mean, we both knew that, Stark said. I just thought that you're inviting a lot of serious trouble on your head to come back to Earth with me when I won't even be around for that long. Well, considering I probably have a few decades in me. Maybe.
I thought you wanted me to come with you.
I do, Stark said. Of course I do. I just keep thinking about what will happen after. I mean, you're doing okay. I just want you to be okay without me, too.
They were close enough to touch, but none of them reached out just yet.
Of course I won't. You should know that I won't. How could I?
Loki asked.
But that's exactly it, Stark said, finally reaching out to grip at both of Loki's forearms. I need to know that you will be fine without me. After me. I need to know you won't just say, damn it all, and let the world burn. I need to know, Loki.
Tony!
You'll be fine without me.
I don't want to be without you!
Stark stared at him for a long moment, like someone hit him in the chest and he had to get his balance back. I can't be your everything, he said then. It's not a weight I can carry, it's too big. I just can't have this constantly over my head.
But you're all I have, Loki said quietly. They crawled out of the dark together. They walked on this path together.
No, I'm not, and I shouldn't be, Tony said. Can't you see that this is exactly what drove you over the edge before? You can't have everything depending on only one thing, especially not on one person, because then if that one thing fails you, you fall apart like a stack of cards. Like when suddenly you thought your family wasn't there anymore. You can't build your world on me, one damaged mortal guy who won't even be around for that long.
You don't know that. Loki shook his head. I could search. Think of something. Maybe.
It's not about that, Tony said. I could get shot tomorrow, or a meteor can fall over my head. Just tell me you will be fine without me.
He asked, pleaded, God damn it, he pleaded.
The girls will definitely be around for a long while. Probably Drongo too, and Hatchet, that guy. I doubt you can get rid of him now. He was gone and you got in a world of trouble. He won't let you out of sight again, not for long.
Loki pulled him in an embrace just to silence him for a moment or two.
Loki, tell me,
the human asked again. Loki took a few large breaths, gripping the man in his arms a little too tightly, maybe. "I'll try," he said at last. That was all he could say, all that he could promise, nothing more.
"Okay."
Tony nodded.
"That's enough. Thank you."
"Oh, don't thank me, you insufferable fool," Loki said. "I'm mad at you right now," he said, but did not let go of him, did not move his arms, not even an inch.
"Still love me, though?"
Sarg asked quietly. "Always,"